The first time she saw him, it wasn't under fireworks or a dramatic sunset. It was in the most ordinary place, a crowded classroom on a dull Monday morning. Yet for her, that single moment held a quiet spark of something that would change her life forever. He was just a boy, sitting 2 rows ahead, laughing at a friend's joke. But to her, he was already the beginning of a secret she would carry inside her heart like a fragile flame. Her name was Aliyah, 16, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of girl who preferred the back corner of the classroom where no one's eyes could reach too deep into her soul. She wasn't shy exactly, but her world was small. Books, a diary, a handful of friends, and 1,000 daydreams that she never spoke aloud. She had always been careful, almost invisible, but the day she saw him, something inside her shifted. Arif wasn't the brightest student, nor the loudest, but there was something about him. His laugh had an ease to it, like it carried the sunlight itself. His presence seemed to warm even the coldest corners of that classroom. And when he smiled, or really smiled up, it was as though the whole world paused for a second, waiting, listening, holding its breath. Aliyah noticed everything about him. The way his hair fell into his eyes when he bent over his notebook. The way he leaned back on his chair, balancing dangerously, while listening half-heartedly to the teacher. The way he treated even the janitor with kindness, nodding in respect when he passed. These little details, unnoticed by the world, became treasures for her. She never told anyone, not her best friend, not her diary, and not fully. She was afraid that if she put it into words, it might break the delicate magic of it all. So, she loved him quietly, secretly, as if her heart had built a hidden garden where only she and her secret could exist. Days passed into weeks, weeks into months. School life rolled on, filled with assignments, exams, and the endless chatter of teenage voices. But for Aliyah, time was marked by the moments she caught glimpses of him. The way his hand brushed against the desk, the way his laughter filled the hallway, the way his voice carried in the morning assembly. Each moment was a stolen thread, and she was weaving them into a tapestry of love that existed only in silence. Sometimes, she wondered if he even knew her name. She doubted it. She wasn't the kind of girl boys noticed. She wasn't the one with perfect hair or the loudest laugh. She wasn't the girl who answered all the questions in class or who had a line of friends following her around. She was just Aliyah, ordinary, quiet, almost forgettable. And yet, in her heart, she had written entire novels about him. Stories where he looked at her, truly looked, and saw something no one else had ever seen. One afternoon, the classroom was unusually quiet. The teacher was late, and students had scattered into their own little groups. Arif was sitting near the window, sunlight spilling across his desk, and for once, he wasn't surrounded by friends. He was just there, sketching something in his notebook. Aliyah's eyes kept drifting toward him, as if pulled by some invisible string. She told herself to stop, to look away, but she couldn't. It was like staring at the sun through the cracks of her fingers, dangerous, irresistible. And then, for the briefest moment, it happened. He looked up. His eyes met hers. It wasn't long, a second, maybe two, but for her, it was eternity compressed into a heartbeat. Her chest tightened, her hands went cold, her diary in her bag suddenly felt like it was burning with the weight of all the unsaid words. She quickly looked away, pretending to be busy with the doodles on her notebook, but inside, the world was trembling. Had he really seen her? Did he notice her? Or was it just a coincidence, a meaningless flicker in the chaos of teenage life? That night, Aliyah wrote in her diary for the first time about him, not fully, not his name, but enough. Today the sky was brighter than usual. I don't know why. Maybe it was because for a second, I felt like I wasn't invisible. From then on, she began to notice more. Arif wasn't just the boy she admired. He was human, flawed, real. He struggled with math. He was late to class almost every day. He sometimes argued with his friends, only to make up 5 minutes later. He wasn't perfect, but to her, his imperfections were what made him even more beautiful. There were days when he seemed tired, weighed down by something unspoken. She wanted to ask, to reach out, but fear wrapped around her like chains. She wasn't brave enough, so she stayed silent, watching from afar, aching with the love she couldn't confess. The school year rolled forward, filled with sports days, cultural fests, and exams. Aliyah found herself collecting moments like seashells on the shore. Once, she saw him help a younger student pick up fallen books. Once, he played basketball, and she cheered silently from the stands, clapping quietly when he scored. Once, she overheard him talk about his dream of becoming a photographer, of capturing life through lenses, because memories fade, but pictures don't. That one sentence etched itself into her heart so deeply that she wrote it over and over again in her diary, as if repeating it would bring her closer to him. And yet, the distance remained. Her love was like a song stuck in her throat, beautiful but unheard. Some nights, she imagined telling him. She would picture the scene, her voice trembling, his eyes softening, the world holding its breath as she whispered, "I like you." But every time, fear won. Fear of rejection, fear of losing even the small, invisible bond she thought they might have. Instead, she let her love grow quietly, like roots under the soil, out deep, unseen, yet unshakable. But life, as it always does, had other plans. It began on a cold winter morning. Aliyah noticed Arif wasn't in class. She thought nothing of Ida, maybe he was late again. But as hours passed, whispers began to spread. Teachers spoke in hushed tones. Friends exchanged worried glances. By lunchtime, the air was heavy with something she couldn't name. She didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of the end. The moment where her silent love story would take a turn she could never have imagined. The whispers turned into silence, and the silence turned into truth. By the end of that day, Aliyah learned what no part of her heart was prepared to hear. Arif had been in an accident, a car, a sudden slip on the road, a cruel twist of fate. He was gone, just like that. At first, the words didn't make sense. Gone? How could someone who had been laughing only yesterday, someone whose voice had filled the hallways, be gone? How could someone who had filled her world with secret light vanish in a single breath? She stared at the faces around her, her classmates crying, her teachers whispering, but none of it felt real. It was like watching a movie where the sound didn't match the scene. Her heart refused to believe it. She clutched her diary that night, pages trembling under her fingers, and wrote the same line over and over. It can't be true. It can't be true. It can't be true. But the truth didn't care for ink or tears. The next morning, when she saw the garlanded photo at the front of the classroom, reality carved itself into her chest like a wound that would never close. The boy she had loved in silence was gone, and she had never told him. That thought haunted her more than the grief itself. Every time she remembered his smile, she thought of the words she had swallowed. Every time she thought of his voice, she thought of hers, the voice that never spoke. She had dreamed of 1,000 futures with him, and yet she hadn't been brave enough to give him even a single truth. Her silence became her heaviest burden. The days that followed were a blur. Teachers tried to comfort the class, friends clung to one another, but Aliyah drifted like a shadow. She sat in the back, staring at his empty desk, tracing the lines of where his name had been carved into the wood. She wanted to cry, to scream, but often all she could do was sit in silence, her grief too heavy for sound. She began visiting the school library more often, not for books, but because it was the only place quiet enough to match the storm inside her. One evening, as she wandered past the shelves, she found a stack of old yearbooks and opened one absent-mindedly. Between the pages, she saw photographs of smiling faces, frozen moments. And then, there he was, Arif, smiling at the camera, one arm around a friend, his eyes full of the same sunlight she had always admired. She touched the photo gently, as if afraid it might disappear. And in that moment, his words came back to hear, the ones she had overheard. Memories fade, but pictures don't. Her chest ached, but a small ember flickered in her heart. Maybe that was his gift to her. He had wanted to capture life because he knew how fragile it was. Maybe that was the lesson she had to carry forward. Still, nights were the hardest. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment she had ever seen him, his laughter, his kindness, that one fleeting second when their eyes had met. She wondered, endlessly, what might have happened if she had spoken. Would he have smiled at her? Would he have laughed kindly? Would he have felt the same? The questions had no answers, and that was their cruelty. One evening, weeks later, she found herself walking past his street. His house stood quiet, the gate closed, the windows dim. She hesitated, then noticed something near the entrance, a small poster board with photographs. It was part of the memorial his family had arranged. Her feet carried her closer, though her heart pounded like thunder. There were pictures of him as a child, pictures of him playing basketball, pictures of him with his parents. And then, one photo stopped her breath. It was him, sitting by the school window, sketching in his notebook the very day she had watched him from across the classroom. Someone had captured that exact moment. She stood frozen, staring at it, tears slipping down her face. In that photo, he looked so alive, so lost in thought, and it felt like fate had given her a mirror of her own memory. That night, she didn't write in her diary. She tore out a blank page instead, and wrote him a letter. Arav, I never told you this, but I liked you. I liked you in silence, in the little stolen moments when no one was watching. I liked the way you laughed, the way you dreamed, the way you looked at the world. I was too afraid to say it then, and now I'll never know if you would have cared. But I want you to know my silence wasn't emptiness. It was love. Softer and quiet, but real. You'll never read this, but maybe the wind will carry it to you. Maybe somehow, you'll know. She folded the letter and placed it between the pages of her diary. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Her unspoken truth, finally written. In the weeks that followed, Aliyah began to change. Slowly, gently, like dawn breaking after the longest night. She still missed him as she always would have, but she began to carry his memory not as a wound, but as a flame. She joined the school's photography club, even though she had never held a camera before. Each time she clicked the shutter, she remembered his words. Memories fade, but pictures don't. She started taking photos of everyday moments of the sunlight through the trees, a friend smiled, a teacher laughing, the quiet of the library. She captured life the way he might have wanted to, and in doing so, she felt closer to him. Her friends noticed the change. They saw her smile more often, saw her speak a little louder. She was still the same quiet Aliyah, but now there was a light in her eyes, a light born not of fantasy, but of strength. One day, months later, she stood in the school courtyard during the annual exhibition. Her photographs were pinned on a board, rows of frozen moments. Students and teachers admired them, pointing out their favorites. And as Aliyah watched from a distance, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a peace. She knew her love story hadn't ended the way she wanted. There had been no confession, no shared moments, no happy ever after. But it had still been real. Her silent love had shaped her, broken her, and then rebuilt her into someone braver, someone who could see beauty in the ordinary, just as he had. That evening, she opened her diary one last time. On the very first page, she wrote, "This is not the story of the words I never said. This is the story of the strength I found in silence, and the boy who taught me to see the world differently. He is gone, but in every picture, in every memory, in every heartbeat I carry him with me." And with that, she closed the diary gently, not as an ending, but as a beginning. Because sometimes, love doesn't need to be spoken. Sometimes, love is in the silence, in the memories, in the way it changes who you are. And though fate had taken him away, he would always live within her, in every photograph, in every unspoken word, in every step of her self-discovery.